Hello my friends, it's Tom Hatsis and thank you for coming to my Tom Talk. Please excuse the bare background, I am in the process of moving. When we say black culture, what exactly are we talking about? First, I'd like to say that I prefer the terms ghetto culture or ratchet culture instead of black culture. This culture is found only among a tiny minority of black Americans, so calling it black culture ignores the fact that most black Americans despise it. As for defining ratchet culture, most of us would agree that writer Titus Caesar's list is as good as any. Gangbanging, drug dealing, abandoning one's family, sleeping around, cheating on your significant other, having multiple baby mamas and baby daddies, creating and listening to music that glorifies all of the above, taking pride in being ignorant or ill-informed, and demeaning or bringing down those who are excelling in their education, thinking that being educated is acting white, and speaking with advanced vocabulary is talking white. I think that pretty much nails it. However, this culture does not originate among black Americans, but rather among the peoples of northern England, including the Scottish Highlands and parts of Ireland. There, in the 1700s, a very similar culture as the kind that we would call either ratchet or ghetto culture flourished. And yet, there wasn't a black person around for hundreds of miles. As one scholar tells us, the cultural patterns prevalent among these northern Brits, Irish, and Scots included in aversion to work, proneness to violence, neglect of education, sexual promiscuity, improvidence, drunkenness, lack of entrepreneurship, reckless search for excitement. Furthermore, those areas were largely without formal laws, street violence being the norm, and that violence was not frowned upon by the people. In fact, they welcomed it, and much of the homicides were over petty nonsense like insults or teasing. Sound familiar? Like we could superimpose those characteristics of the northern Brits, Irish, and Scottish people onto the characteristics of ratchet culture described by Titus Caesar? What we today call black culture isn't really black culture. It comes from northern Brittany. It's white people shit. That culture would eventually die out throughout the 1800s. However, while it was still alive and well, it was exported to America in the 1700s, specifically to the South. And thus, Southern vigilantism, which had already been the norm across the Atlantic, became a staple in the South in the form of lynching. Another staple brought over from Northern Brittany was language. Such phrasing like, "I be going to the store," or "we at the park." That's right. Even Ebonics comes from northern Brittany. Hell, even the burning crosses that those idiots stand around in their goofy bedsheets comes from Scotland. This was the culture that southern black Americans, both free and enslaved, marinated in for generations. But history is a web, not a straight line. Let's go back to the late 1700s and see what kind of country the Founding Fathers intended to create, and why the culture of northern Brittany did not fit into this new vision of the United States. The Founding Fathers wanted freedom, but felt that prudence was a prerequisite. What they saw among the American masses shocked them. Alexander Hamilton called the people vicious and vile. John Jay commented that the people's conduct should confirm the Tory maxim that men are incapable of governing themselves. Drinking, prostitution, and gambling all ran rampant. Additionally, laws and cultural pressure against divorce was almost non-existent. Women sold their bodies with ease without fear of any kind of lawful repercussions. More concerning, laws against sexual assault were lax and hardly enforced at all. This unbridled freedom had to stop. In other words, a self-governing people would first have to learn how to govern themselves as individuals. As one historian writes, personal freedom and sensual pleasure came under attack not because the revolutionaries were puritanical, but because democracy is puritanical. Fast forward to the great migrations of Irish, Scottish, and other northern Brits in the late 1700s and throughout the 1800s. They first largely settled in Pennsylvania, But as wave after wave reached the Atlantic shoreline, they migrated south to places like Georgia, the Carolinas, and surrounding areas, bringing their culturally regressive attitudes into an America that was trying to rebrand itself through virtue and hard work after the American Revolution. And it was such a backward culture that would cast a looming shadow over Black Americans, slaves at first, and then, later, emancipated people. And it was this culture that Black Americans took into western and northern cities during the Great Migration. While that culture has largely died out, Thomas Sowell sees its residues in inner city ghettos and even still among impoverished southern white Americans. And we cannot ignore the racial angle. As white Americans left this backward and regressive culture behind them through education and meaningful employment, Black Americans were stuck in it due to the systemic oppression of Jim Crow laws. As the United States has slowly become free of systemic racism, we are seeing not only less and less ratchet culture, but more and more Black Americans who want nothing to do with it. So what created ratchet culture? Well, it was the Puritanism of democracy, a regressive culture imported from Northern Britannia, and systemic racism that kept Black Americans locked in that culture while white Americans were given opportunities to get out of it. So where do we go from here? First, the good news. If reading is acting white, then not reading is also acting white. So you may as well pick up a book. Second, while that culture remains, the systemic oppression that once locked people into it is gone. Not only is nobody stopping anyone from doing anything they want to do, but companies and businesses are literally tripping over themselves to hire as many minorities as possible just so they can show how progressive they are. So you may as well fill out that job application. Because even if that's acting white, not filling out the application, well, that's also acting white. As for the Puritanism of democracy, I think we can be good citizens and still have a good time. Millions and millions of people do it every day, and it's really quite easy. Yes, enjoy that beer. Just don't become a drunken asshole and don't get behind the wheel of a car. Yes, enjoy that joint. Just don't become a burnout. Yes, have a great night with your significant other. Just stick around if a baby comes out of it. Really, it all comes down to personal responsibility. And in that way, I agree with the Founding Fathers. Freedom begins with choice. And at least in my life and in the lives of other people I know, choosing discipline, honesty, and hard work has meant greater freedoms and opportunities. No one wants to hire, work with, or form a partnership with someone who is unreliable. Nobody wants their Sunday picnic ruined because two guys got into a fist fight over petty nonsense like some floozy choosing one over the other. This isn't Black culture. This is a regressive culture from an area of the world where people get arrested for making offensive social media posts while groomer gangs stalk their streets. Just imagine how asinine those ginger savages were 300 years ago. In fact, one need not imagine it. If a person wants to know how stupid white people acted 300 years ago, she need only immerse herself in today's ratchet culture and she will be acting every bit as white as the kid studying for her college entrance exams. Only one of them has the potential to live a meaningful and fruitful life, and the other, well, it's prison, poverty, the morgue, or some combination thereof. Choose wisely. Well, my friends, that's all I have for you this time, and thank you for stopping by. If you're watching this on YouTube and enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and liking the video, and maybe leaving me a comment. If you're watching this on my Substack, please consider becoming a paid subscriber. And until we meet again, I'm Tom Hatsis, reminding you that you free your mind by using your brain. Peace.